Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Lee Warwick. This is Tech Junior Tutorials, and we're doing Advent of Code 2019, and this is day 2. So let's jump to it. So this is day 2. Um, just like day 1, the large part of the challenge of this is understanding this crazy set of instructions that they give you. Um, so before we jump into that, just real quick, I'm going to put all of this code into a repository and link it on the video. So I should be able to see that in the description below. So you can check out this code in case like following along at home and maybe don't have a good connection and the code on your screen isn't high resolution. So anyway, back to it. They were talking about 1202 program alarm. And I had to read this about 800 times today. But basically, you're working with something called an int code. And basically, so here's the input for this. So you're going to work with this array, right? And you're going to parse this array in groups of 4. And so the first group here we'll look at. So the first position is going to tell you what you're going to do with the next 3 inputs. So 1 means you're going to add, 2 means you're going to multiply, and 99 means end the program. After that, the next 3 things are not the values themselves, they are the location of the values, which is another thing that threw me off. So this would be the position of the first input, the position of the second input, and then the position where you're going to write the answer. So if 1 is add, we're going to add position 0 with position 0 and write it to position 3. So position 0 is 1. Position 3 is this 3, which is a great place to start because you're already kind of getting confused. So we would add 1 plus 1 and then overwrite this third, or this, third index with 2. And then we would jump, after we were done with that operation, we would jump up to this number 1 and we would do another addition, this time looking at position 1, position 2, writing again to position 3, so on and so forth. So they give you a couple examples of this down here. So like here's this entire, a shorter version of what we saw before. So here you would look at index 9, index 10, and add them together, which I think would be 30 and 40, and then write it to position 3, which would be where that 3 is. So the 3 would become 70, which you can see down here. So that honestly wasn't too bad. But then you get to part 2, which was a real doozy. So they go through explaining more about this int code program, talking about memory addresses and the instructions. I almost forgot. They added in the very last part of the instructions here on part 1. Position 1, they want you to change right off the bat to 12, and 2 needs to be changed to 2. So that means that this becomes 12, that becomes 2 at the start of this challenge. So you get the input, change those 2 values, and then figure out what kind of function you can write to produce the output that they're looking for, which in this case was this 3 million value. So then in part 2, back to that, it's building off of part 1 again, like day 1, except now they're trying to make you figure out like what is the noun and verb. So basically, like they had you change positions 1 and 2 in the part 1, they're through the whole explanation saying like this is a noun, we're going to call position 1 a noun, position 2 a verb, and then you're going to have to find out what 2 values fit into there to run the same program to give you the new output, which is this, what, 19,690,000? So this like totally melted my brain. I thought that they were talking about what entire program would you have to make, like what int code array would you have to make yourself in order to do this thing, and then this threw me off forever. this 100 times noun plus verb. I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And basically, that instead of saying, hey, write the noun and the verb next to each other with a zero spacing or something like that, they want you to take the noun, whatever you get, and multiply it by 100. So that would give you 1200, and then just add the verb to it, which, if the verb is to, would give you the 02. So that's the output that they were looking for, which in this case was 8298. So that being said, if you're watching this at home and you're like, man, Lee's blazing through this thing, no big deal. Believe me, I spent a lot of time pounding my head on my desk today before I actually understood this set of instructions, and had to ask some other people doing the advent of code, like, hey, what the heck are they looking for? Before I got a clue, like, oh, you're supposed to use the original input dummy. So don't feel bad about that. All right, so let's jump into this in JavaScript. Jump over to trusty VS Code, and let's get started. So I've got our inputs here in a text file, and we're going to read from this file and then parse these inputs and try and get our answer. So the first thing we need to do is bring in the file system. So require fs. And for day 1, we did read file. This is a really, really short file, and read file makes you use callbacks. So we're going to do read file sync, just to kind of show both ways to do it. And it's a little bit easier to read, so let's try that. So read file sync, and that's going to take our location and the encoding format. We'll call that input. And then let's just console log the input and see what we get. So to run this file in Node, just write Node gravity assist, and there's all our numbers. We are going to have to parse these into actual numbers instead of strings, because it's going to read this file as a one giant string. So we'll need to parse that into an actual array. So let's go ahead and do that now. So let's say that this is string input. We want the numbers. Do num input is equal to input. So we're going to split based on the comma, and then we're going to map that. So split creates an array, and then that returns a new array. So we can call .map on that. And we're going to say string with a little arrow function. It loops over that array, and we're going to take each thing in there and convert it into a number. So if we do this, yeah, input is not defined because I didn't change it. And we're going to have to change this to input. And now we've got our array of numbers, which is good. So now we need to write this program that parses all of these inputs. So like I did in the Python video, I'm going to do this with a function instead of a for loop. I know we're doing sets of 4 inputs at a time, and you could do that with a for loop, but I feel like that's a lot messier than just doing it with like a functional approach. So let's go ahead and write a function to do this. Call this int code, say it takes an array, and it's going to take an index that we're going to start at 0 by default. And then first thing we want to do is grab that operation code or opcode, and that'll be the array at the position of the index. So we start at 0, I remember, and that first number is going to tell us if we're adding or multiplying, or if we're stopping the program. So if we are going to stop the program, we'll check if opcode is equal to 99, and we'll just return position 0. and then we are going to grab rest of those operation or indexes that we need. So I want to grab the very next one, which is going to be at 1. Position 2 and 3. That's going to be 2. And this is actually going to be where we write our answer to. So remember, we're doing the operation. Grab the first number's position, second number's position, and then where we're going to output the final answer to. So we're going to take 1 and then 1 again and write 1 plus 1 to position 3, which is coincidentally right there. So do if opcode is equal to 1, let's make some brackets here. R at answer index is going to be equal to program at position 1 plus program at position 2. Okay, and then we're going to want to call this recursively, which is really fancy and kind of mind melty, but stick with me for a second. So we're going to increment our index by 4 positions. So we skip 1, 0, 0, 3, jump up to this next grouping. Then we're just going to call this function again and pass in the same array and the new index value of 4. It's going to do the same stuff again, figure out, what operation we're doing, give us the plus or the multiplication, increase the index, keep going until it hits 99. So we can actually really quickly do this again for opcode 2. Let's change this to a multiplication. And we should be done. Oh, we need to actually return this. So if we make sure that we return at all points, then we can call this one time and recursively get the final output that we want. I wrote a macro for this and I'm forgetting to use it. So we want a console log int code of num input. And with any luck, hopefully we'll get the answer that we're looking for. Ooh, that is not what we want. So that reminds me. What we want to do for this is we actually want to, according to the instructions here, you read the very, very last bit. They say, hey, before you run this, change position 1 to 12 and change position 2 to 2. So we're just going to hard code that really quick and say that num input 1 is equal to 12 and 2 is equal to 2, and that should be what we need. So we get 3,560,264, which is the number we're looking for. So nailed it. Now part 2 is where things got really, really messy for me. Trying to figure out what all they wrote. But what we essentially need to do is just like we changed these 2 positions, they want us to change those 2 positions programmatically to search for a certain output. And that certain output is this number, which is 19 million something. So we're checking for that number, and we want to do this programmatically. So you could go in here and you could monkey around with this encode function, but I would say a better way to do that would be, instead of doing this, modifying our original function and like adding a couple parameters, making this a little bit more complicated, we could do a higher order function and write basically a function that calls our previous function. So we're going to call that, for lack of a better naming convention, set encode. and that's going to take our input and our position 1 value and our position 2 value, and it's going to call, actually, it's going to take these two and let's change that to input. And this will be position 1, position 2. Then we're going to return, trying to think if I did this correctly. Yeah. So we are going to return int code with num input. So this will work, but let's run this real quick. So set encode, and we're looking for 19 million something. Or, I'm sorry, this is the first time around, so we're actually looking for that 3 million number again. And we hit not a number, which is awesome. So what do we mess up here? Position 1, position 2. Oh, we didn't actually pass in the inputs. So we need, what, 12 and 2? Cool. So there's our 3 million number that we got previously. But one extra thing that we need to add to this is we need to actually copy this array. So we want to loop through this original input a whole bunch of times. We can word wrap this. Yeah. So we want to loop through this input a whole bunch of times and run it over and over again to try and find the two values to put into here to equal that certain 19 million number. But if we change this, then we're kind of up a creek. So what we want to do is not mutate or change that original value. We want to create a new value. And so we can do that pretty easily in JavaScript by doing a map. So we're going to say input copy is equal to input map, and we're not going to change these to anything. We're just going to return them. So this will create a new array for us. I think there's another like splice or slice or something or whatever you can do to do a quick copy of an array, but this works for our purposes. So let's go ahead and make sure that this still works. Oops. Send now. But copy. So we need to call this with input copy. All right, so now we have parity with our original version. So now what we have to do is some loops to actually get this number down here. And so we'll say this is solution number 1. Now we want to do solution number 2. So to do this, they tell you in the problem somewhere, yeah, the inputs can be between 0 and 99. So we're going to loop from 0 to 99 twice in a nested for loop. We're going to do for let I equal 0 is less than 100, which will give us 0 to 99. I plus plus. Let's just copy that, move it over, change that to J. Give ourselves nested for loops, and then we're going to look for inputs to equal that. So we're going to say, grab this set encode. I'm going to say if this is equal to 19 million something, console log our output. So we're looking for two different values. And it's going to be 82 for the noun, 98 for the verb. And basically, to create that programmatically, you're going to do this little formula. So if you have 82 as the first answer, if you multiply that by 100, that'll give you 8200. And then you just have to add 98, and that will account for this 0 that could occur here. So if you have a 2 and you just like munge those together with a string, using like a template literal or something, you might get 122 instead of 1202. So we'll go ahead and plug this little formula in. And that should give us the output. But it didn't. So what did we miss here? Oh. Right. There we go. So now we've got 8298. Okay. Yep, that's the value that we're looking for. And we're done. Cool. So, that's all I got for day 2 with JavaScript. Join me tomorrow for day 3. These keep kicking my butt, so I don't know if I'll be able to hang in there until Christmas with these, but hopefully I do, because I think I've learned a lot of Python so far. Maybe not as much JavaScript, but these have been pretty fun to finally crack whenever you finally get that answer. So yeah, if you're not doing these, try them, have fun with them, and I will see you tomorrow.